Welcome to the Coach Toolbox. I'm your host, Dr. Ajay Nangalia, a leadership coach and counselor. This channel supports your professional and personal development as a leader with research-based and practice-focused learning. And we bring you the best career and life advice from guests who've been there and done that successfully. And now, our session today. Hi everybody, welcome to our conversation today, and this is a process that just about all of us go through once a year at least, sometimes twice a year, and that is what I'm talking about is the appraisal interview and the appraisal process. Now this creates stress not only for you and I who are going through the appraisal, but it also creates equal amount of stress for the leaders and for the managers who are doing the appraisal. So it's just a stress-filled experience in so many cases, so many times. So to talk about this, how to navigate this appraisal process with the least amount of trauma, within a way which is much more healthy and positive, we have with us Dr. Abhay Valsankar. Once again on our show, Dr. Abhay has done an excellent podcast just a few weeks ago on managing unconscious biases. So I encourage you to check out that podcast, and I'll put the link of that podcast and that episode in the description of this episode. So Dr. Abhay has about 3 decades of experience across the globe, across sectors, all the best multinationals. He's a postgrad in management from TISS and has a PhD in emerging diversity and inclusion practices, and I'll put up a link to his LinkedIn profile and his email ID and contact details in the podcast description. So if you would like to access him for some input, some support, some assistance, some consulting, all the details are there. So Abhay, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
All well and as well as can be expected. So Abhay, in our work as an executive coach, in my work as an executive coach, I find that this appraisal interview still causes stress. And what I have learned now as an executive coach is it causes perhaps equal amount stress for the manager as well as the person who's experiencing it, the direct report. So tell us a little bit more about, why this happens from 2 vantage points, from human level and from organization level, from manager side, from direct report side. So these 4 sort of perspectives shed some light for us on this.
Sure. Let's begin with organizational level. You will be surprised, even in this day and age, the organizational goals are not properly cascaded down in such a way that the individual goal sheets reflect tangible factors of performance measurement, leaving a lot of scope for qualitative, which effectively means subjective discussions around the performance. This is really stressful for the managers as well as for the team member, because there is no common and pre-agreed context framework for discussing the performance results. As a consequence, opinions dominate facts, leading to hurt feelings. So this is the context in which I am going to respond this question holistically.
I love the way you have said this. It's that opinions dominate facts. That's really sums up the ethos of this context within which this conversation happens. Go ahead.
Absolutely. As you very rightly said right at the beginning, although the appraisals per se are done once a year and sometimes there are mid-year formal appraisal discussions as well, if the organization doesn't have a well set out process to exchange performance feedbacks throughout the year, the appraisees get some very rude shocks when they hear some negative or, let's say, developmental feedback for the first time in the formal appraisal meeting. That not only creates a trust gap, but also snatches away an opportunity from the appraisee to improve his or her own performance. Bell curves, as all of us commonly know them as, which are artificially imposed rating distribution mandates, they also add stress, mainly on the appraisers. Of course, there is a resultant stress on the appraisees as well. However, I must add that an equally forceful argument one can make in favor of bell curves as well. So, these days there are a lot of organizations which have really got rid of bell curves, but there are equal number of organizations who have those. Most of the organizations do a fair effort in training appraisers in some way, that is the managers. But I can't say that for sure for the appraisees or the employees. Now, this is a real issue. Appraisees are as much an important part of the process, if not more important than the appraisers, because let's not forget that their careers are at stake here. That's why they are important. Appraisals, when seen as a performance measurement process aimed at stack ranking individuals for consequent compensation rises, the stress factor seeps in at that stage. Disposable funds available for such compensation revisions are always going to be limited, and employees have to be upwardly adjusted within such pools. To add to the woes, raises are supposed to be unevenly distributed by making positive discriminations. Whether there are predefined bell curves or not, these positive discriminations are expected. And finally, the process has to be completed in a prescribed time frame defined by HR. So you can understand that these are the organizational factors that cause it. But as you at the beginning said, that at the human level also we have to look at how this plays out. The way I look at it is that when humans transact any business together, organization and human level impacts are not really separable, especially when individual performance is being measured. Anyone going through any individual scrutiny, by definition, is stressed. And when such a scrutiny is done badly, it causes distress. And what do I mean by badly done scrutiny? It simply means that the appraiser, rather than focusing on performance of a person, invariably focuses on the person itself. To give you an example, when a particular performance target is not met by the appraisee, the appraiser starts describing such suboptimal performance in the form of appraisee's personal attributes, such as lack of commitment or lack of accountability, etc. Then appraisee finds it very difficult to accept such generalizations because it is not supported by facts, by performance-related facts. This is the appraisee story. And the appraisers are also stressed when they are not trained to deliver performance feedbacks in a constructive manner. Constructive is the important word here, because feedbacks are given, feedbacks are exchanged, but not necessarily in a constructive way. They carry out the process based on their wits, and when realized that they are unable to evoke desired response from the appraisee, they also get distressed. So therefore, this distress is, in a sense, pretty mutual.
It seems to be part of this process.
Yes, it almost appears to be an integral part of this process.
So there is stress and distress at the organization level. There is stress and distress at a human level, and it seems to be that's the way this scrutiny is designed. I like the word that you used, scrutiny. So tell us from some examples of what you have seen, how these things play out.
Right. So I'm going to give you, let's discuss a couple of examples here.
Sure.
The first one is related to an extremely competent subject matter expert who, by virtue of his talent, was amongst the top 10 most indispensable employees of an organization which employed about 2,500 people. So you know how important this person was. All his own performance metrics invariably trended in the outstanding quadrant, and he demanded nothing less from his team. Obviously, high performer he was. He, however, was a poor appraiser. The appraisal forms he filled for his team had nothing but just the rating numbers. That's all. No substantiated data, no explanations, no examples, etc. Effectively, those were merely pieces of forms populated with his opinions expressed in the form of numbers. His appraisal meetings did not last for more than 10 minutes per team member. You can imagine the plight of all the appraisees under him. Funny part was that his aura in the organization was such that his supervisor never dared to coach him for doing a better appraisal, leave alone even pointing to him that what he was doing was not even remotely an appraisal. Needless to mention that he had extraordinary attrition in his team. So there is a lesson here. And what is it? The most important one is never attend an appraisal meeting without adequate training. And this is true for both appraisers as well as appraisees. So this is one example that comes to my mind spontaneously as we talk. The second example that comes to my mind is that in a meeting that has been set up to deliver or inform the appraisee about the final performance rating, I have seen it in n number of cases that the appraisers at that point in time literally chicken out. They typically say, I had given you a higher rating, but the normalization team brought it down. So what can I do?
Yeah.
And worst still is when they go, they progress, and as they progress, the appraiser actually starts rattling out his own grievances by saying, look at me, after 10 years of meritorious service, I still have to beg for my promotion, etc. Now, this is, calling for sympathy. Doesn't work. Do you really think an appraisee will be convinced with his rating given in such a meeting? No. In fact, he or she will start looking at the boss as a powerless creature and start turning to someone else for getting help and assistance in their own career journeys. So, therefore, another way of carrying out a disastrous meeting, and I've seen plenty of examples of that.
And it's really unfortunate that that happens. So now that you've been in this field for 30 years, you've on both sides of the table, and now as a consultant, what do you suggest are some things that managers do to prepare and handle this appraisal in a much more positive way?
Right. I think that's a very good question, because a good preparation will enable both sides to do their job well. First and foremost, never give any feedback to the appraisee for the first time in a formal appraisal meeting. The appraisee should never get a surprise in such meetings. The feedbacks that are given should be actually a compilation of many feedbacks given throughout the appraisal period, to ensure that this is done well, and especially there is no recency effect that creeps in. I actually very strongly recommend all managers to maintain what I call as a critical incidents diary, or CID for short. And this is very helpful for an easy and fair recall. Okay, when you go for a formal meeting, the manager must gather all information about the team member and go through the same before getting into the appraisal meeting. Such information must include the experience of the appraisee, skills, past performance ratings, past awards, promotion history, etc. That gives him a good context in which the meeting can be conducted. Next is such meetings should be scheduled in consultation with the appraisees to ensure their total involvement and commitment. And unless something really earth-shattering happens, these pre-agreed schedules must be treated sacrosanct. The appraisee must feel that the manager is giving a very high degree of importance to such meetings. Then follow a 70-30 rule during the meeting. which means that the appraiser must make sure that appraisees get more time to talk. After all, these meetings and their outcomes have a direct bearing on the appraisees' careers. There are many more. Keep the focus very developmental, talk about the future, seek feedback, administer feed forward, etc. And all these go into preparing well for the appraisal meetings.
All right, so we're speaking about from the point of view of the managers. Any examples come to mind from your experience in terms of some managers who have done it in a nice way?
Yeah, so I have actually seen some managers, especially in the IT world, because as you know that in IT world everything is dynamic. The manager who is appraising the employee is not necessarily the one who has been there throughout the appraisal period. Okay, and therefore it becomes the manager's responsibility not only to administer feedback, performance feedback, for the period he has been the supervisor. It is his responsibility to get all the details, performance metrics, etc., for the period that somebody else was the manager of this employee, so that this employee gets what I call as a fair appraisal. Now, I have seen managers who actually do that. They go to the earlier managers, they go through the files, they have all the data ready, and they very consciously make sure that they don't allow any kind of a clouding or coloring to happen based on only what they have observed, because then that will be unfair to an employee.
So true, so true. So we've been speaking from the viewpoint of managers. What do team members, the direct reports who are going through the appraisal, what do they need to do to prepare and ensure that they get a fair and a positive experience from the process?
So basically, the first and foremost thing that they should do is they have to take responsibility for the outcomes. They cannot leave it to the managers alone, because it is their careers that hinge around such meetings. So they have to understand it's a mutual responsibility. If at all, they are slightly more responsible than the managers as far as this thing is concerned. They should carry their performance data to the meeting. Just the way they would not like managers to talk about opinions and not facts, they also should talk about facts and not opinions. They should be prepared to seek feedback, and more importantly, they should ask for feed forward, because feed forward is futuristic and it is going to enable them to perform better. They should ask for guidance, help, and suggestions to take their performance to the next level. Now, these are the matters of their initiatives. And last but not the least is they should be candid in accepting areas of improvement.
And this all would go much better if the manager-subordinate relationship is a healthy one, so that across the year there have been such conversations on an ongoing basis. Yeah, you can't all of a sudden develop a healthy conversation once a year during a meeting which is called an appraisal meeting. So having said that, let's assume the appraisal interview just doesn't go well. So then, what does the direct report do, or what does the manager do? I suppose it will impact the direct report more. So some thoughts there when this meeting doesn't go well.
Actually, any progressive organization has very well-defined channels of appeal available for the employees in such eventualities. They are typically HR, skip level manager, or in extreme cases even ombudspersons. Employees should utilize these appropriately. The word appropriately is very important here, because they should scrupulously avoid taking these matters, or let's say grievances, to unconcerned folks. Unconcerned meaning unconnected, such as their own peers. They should never do that, because that creates negativity and certainly doesn't help their cause. The manager will be well advised to seek professional opinion, say from their HR business partners to correct the situations. Actually, it is easier said than done, but both should approach the issue with a solution-centric inclination rather than allowing the personal hurt feelings to cloud the whole issue. Because when two individuals are transacting business and something goes wrong, there are always possibilities of hurt feelings getting created, and that should be really avoided. Only then rational solutions are possible.
So through our conversation, you have already alluded to what makes for a good appraisal from both sides. So as we sort of start drawing our conversation to a close, what would your advice or tips be for managers who are preparing to conduct an appraisal interview?
Okay, so as I said right in the first part of our discussion, the manager should basically get all the performance data for the appraisee. They should also get sufficient information on the past performance, and they should be really ready in terms of what are the messages that they want to facilitate through these meetings and how they are going to facilitate those in a constructive way. They should also study the self-appraisals made by the appraisees, because that also gives them some amount of understanding as to what is going to be the frame of mind of an appraisee when he or she enters the meeting. These are some of the good practices that the managers must follow so that they are able to steer the meeting in a positive way. Lastly, again, they should get themselves properly trained if they feel that there is a need for that, especially training in how to deliver constructive feedbacks is essential for every manager as a part of preparation.
So true. So from the other side of the table, some tips or advice for the team member who is going to experience or undergo an appraisal interview? How can he or she make it a good experience for her or him?
So again, as I said, good experience will come out of how you face the entire process. Do you face it as a developmental process, or do you face it as a process where somebody is by a presumption that somebody is going to show you your faults, and therefore you better be prepared to prove that person wrong? If you go with that kind of an orientation, then it is going to be a display of series of defensive behaviors on your part. But if you go there with a predisposition that this is a meeting that I'm going to utilize it for my furtherance of my career goals, then the paradigm is very different.
Now, over the last 6-7 months, our normal way of working has been completely disrupted. So how can we adapt some of these principles in this COVID-19 situation? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Actually, the fundamentals have not changed. Let's accept it. The way of working physically had changed a lot, but the fundamentals have not changed. Having said that, let's agree that there are certain things that have changed which we have to take cognizance of as part of the new normal, as they say. What had changed? What had changed is that the appraiser and appraisees have literally not met even once, during this period. So that opportunity to connect in person and build and strengthen relationships, that has not happened. And in the new normal, that may not happen very frequently. So therefore, they will have to figure out ways and means of still building relationships in a remote kind of environment. Now, again, this is not something new, because even pre-COVID, we have seen plenty of examples where the manager is sitting in Chennai and the employee is sitting in Delhi, and they still didn't have opportunities to meet frequently. But here it is happening for everybody. There it was happening for only few people. So therefore, even organizationally, one has to look at certain systemic changes that they need to bring in so that they make sure that these relationship building meetings happen by way of an institutionalized process rather than as discretionary process initiated by the manager. So for example, calendarizing one-on-one meetings at a predefined frequency, calendarizing skip level meetings at a particular frequency, calendarizing team meetings at a particular frequency. Now, again, I'm not saying that all these things were not happening then, but now it is much more imperative because these are becoming more primary channels of communication, and therefore it has to happen more formally.
So, Abhay, now you've been in this in this field for a long time now, both as a manager, as now as a consultant. So, if I, as an organization leader or perhaps a startup founder, would like to bring you in to address this issue around making sure that the appraisal processes and all go off smoothly for my teams, what are some things that you can do to support my organization? Can you tell us a little bit about, what you have done, the type of work that you have done in this line for other organizations?
It all starts with the organization's ability to succinctly articulate their goals for the period, because the extent of clarity the organization is able to provide at that level will determine whether they will be able to cascade down the goals at the departmental and then ultimately at the individual level with the same clarity. If the organization goals are not clearly written down, it becomes very, very difficult for the individuals to have those properly defined. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, how does this cascade happen? Meaning, it's not merely that organization goals are defined and then, by way of downward communication, the goals just get cascaded down. But there has to be a linkage of those goals with the goals of the departments and thereafter at the individual level. So, the linkages have to be very clearly established. For example, if let's say there is a person in purchase department or procurement department, the way his or her goals are written, he or she should know how exactly those goals are responding to the corporate goal. So corporate goal, let's say, is cost optimization by 15%. Then his goal, whatever he is supposed to do, because we are talking about a procurement or a purchase function, then cost becomes very important. So his goal, when he writes it, he should exactly know that if he and all others in his function accomplish it, they have meaningfully contributed to that particular corporate goal. So linkages to the bigger goal should be very clear to the employees, because when that happens, there is hope that collective accomplishment of goals will automatically enable organizations to achieve their corporate goals. Now, true. This is where I normally begin when we have to establish a process. Then, of course, there are several other skill level interventions that we do. So, for example, how to give feedback, how not to give feedback, how to receive feedback, how not to receive feedback, when to give feedback and when not to give feedback, when to give feed forward instead of feedback, how to actually institutionalize a process of feed forward. There are plenty of things that have to be done, and those are, as I said, skill building kind of interventions. But essentially, organizations' ability to define goals, cascade them down in a meaningful way so that people see connection of their goals with organizational goals is the fundamental framework of this process.
All right. And for those of you who are listening and would like to engage with Abhay more on this and perhaps how we could support you, the details are given in the podcast description. So Abhay, as we bring our conversation to a close, any closing thoughts or words of wisdom, especially for those of us whose appraisals must be coming around the corner?
Okay. Firstly, let us understand that appraisal is not a ritual, it is a responsibility. Let's accept that. Then the second one is data focus helps us to keep away subjective and therefore contentious issues. Issues become contentious when opinions creep in, as we discussed right at the beginning. Then the next one is performance coaching is an ongoing activity. The appraiser should never try to accomplish it only through formal appraisal meetings. That doesn't work. And lastly, my favorite is consciously avoid biases from recency to affinity. We spoke about unconscious biases, but now I'm saying be conscious that these biases can be present at the unconscious level and avoid them.
All right. Okay, and the link to that episode of yours on managing and dealing with unconscious bias is also in the podcast description for those of you who are interested, and I do encourage you to listen to that one too. So Abhay, thank you so much for being on the show once again. This has been very, very helpful. You have started the process of dialogue for something that is so important, but people tend to assume, like you said, that the memo has gone, so it will happen automatically in a very positive way, but hota nahi hai. It doesn't really actually happen in practice. But as both leaders and those who are getting appraised, the appraisees, as both make a concerted effort, I believe that things will be a positive experience for both parties. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Bye.
And that's it for